everything. You are about to hear something that will make you rethink your entire life. This moment, yes, your moment has left even the heavens in awe. Something happened to you that you didn't even realize. And what I'm about to reveal will forever change how you see the power of your faith. You are watching this for a reason. You have been through trials, setbacks, and moments when you thought you couldn't push through. But something shifted. Something in you has been noticed, not by people, but by powers far greater. Let's be honest about where you have been. I'm not talking about the version of you that shows up to work or smiles at family gatherings. I am talking about the real you. The you that sits alone in the car after parking, just staring out the windshield, wondering how much longer you can keep this up. The you that lays in bed at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, doing the math on bills that don't add up, or replaying the words of a person who walked away. That is the moment I want to talk about. The world didn't see it, your friends didn't see it, but the spiritual realm saw everything. This is where the difference lies between you and everyone else. Look around at the world today. It is full of people who are spiritually asleep. When things get hard for them, they fold. When the pressure mounts, they look for a way out. They blame, they complain, and they give up. That is the standard human reaction. That is what the them crowd does. They demand easy lives and curse God when the road gets rocky. But you are different. You are not built like them. Think back to that specific moment when the odds were completely stacked against you. It might have been a financial deadline that looked impossible to meet. It might have been a medical diagnosis that tried to steal your future. It might have been a betrayal by someone you trusted with your life. In that moment, logic told you to panic. Reason told you to be angry. The enemy, the negative spiritual forces that roam this earth, was betting on you to break. They were watching you, waiting for the collapse. They expected you to scream, to quit, or to turn your back on your beliefs. But you didn't. In that moment, when life was pushing the hardest, you chose faith instead of fear. You didn't realize it then, but that was a hidden camera moment. The universe was testing your structural integrity. It wasn't punishment. It was a qualification exam. Most people fail this test. They get bitter. But you quietly wiped your tears, took a deep breath, and whispered, "I trust you, God." You kept moving forward when you had every valid excuse to stop. That single decision created a shockwave. You might have felt weak, but your spirit was displaying massive strength. When you held on to your faith while others would have turned their backs or grown bitter, you caught divine attention. You see, it is easy to have faith when the bills are paid and everyone loves you. That is cheap faith. Anyone can do that. But to have faith when the walls are closing in, that is rare. That is the kind of faith that makes the spiritual realms stop and take notice. This was a turning point, a complete change in the spiritual atmosphere around your life. You thought you were just surviving a bad week. In reality, you were entering a new tier of spiritual authority. You didn't just endure the pain, you transcended it. You confused the enemy because you didn't react according to their script. And up in the high courts of heaven, the activity stopped. The angels paused. Because someone on earth you was doing the impossible, you were holding the line. You need to understand that this wasn't accidental. The trials you faced were not random bad luck. They were the fire designed to refine gold. And because you didn't melt, because you stayed solid, the narrative has changed. You are no longer just another person in the crowd. You have been marked as an outlier. This is why you feel like you don't fit in with the people around you anymore. They are playing a game of comfort. You are fighting a battle of purpose. You stood tall when you were supposed to fall, and that defiance against the darkness is exactly what we need to discuss next. Because what happened next didn't just surprise the angels, it completely stunned them. Chosen one, pause for a second. You didn't click on this video by accident, and the algorithm didn't bring you here. Your spirit was guided here. Don't be a spectator in your own breakthrough. If you feel that pull in your chest, subscribe right now. Don't let the distraction of the world make you miss the very signal heaven is trying to send you. The illogical choice, a faith beyond reason. Let's look at the cold, hard facts of your situation. If we put your life on a spreadsheet, the math simply does not add up. By all human logic, by every statistic and every reasonable expectation, you should be broken right now. You should be bitter. You should be planning your revenge or drowning your sorrows in things that numb the pain. That is what a normal person does when their heart is shattered or their bank account hits zero. When the doctor gives the bad news or the partner packs their bags, the logical human response is to fall apart. Reason dictates that when you are hit, you fall down. When you are hurt, you lash out. That is the law of the physical world. But here is where you confused everyone, including the spiritual forces watching you. You reached a fork in the road. This was a distinct moment in time. On the left was the path of the world. That path is wide and crowded. It is filled with people who wear their trauma like a badge of honor. It is the path of why me? It is the path of anger, victimhood, and cynicism. It is easy to walk down that road. Gravity pulls you there. The world expected you to take that turn. Your friends expected it. Even your own mind probably told you that you had every right to be angry, to give up, and to let your heart turn cold. Then there was the path on the right, the narrow path, the path of the chosen. This path makes absolutely no sense to the logical mind. It required you to stand in the middle of the fire and refuse to burn. It demanded that you look at the chaos destroying your life and choose peace. Not a fake smile, but a deep, grounded silence. You stood there with tears in your eyes and a heavy heart, and you made the illogical choice. You chose to trust. You chose grace when you received none. You chose to keep believing in a plan you couldn't see, even when the present reality looked like a disaster. Do you understand how confusing this is to the enemy? We need to talk about spiritual warfare for a second. The dark forces that operate in this world are students of human nature. They have been watching humanity for thousands of years. They know the patterns. They know that if they apply enough pressure, 99% of people will crack. They have a playbook. They threw everything at you: the financial stress, the emotional betrayal, the isolation, expecting the standard reaction. They were waiting for you to curse God. They were waiting for you to abandon your values. They were ready to celebrate your spiritual collapse. But you went off script. You broke the pattern. When they expected screaming, you gave them prayer. When they expected you to seek revenge, you offered forgiveness. When they expected you to crumble in fear, you stood firm in faith. You have no idea how disruptive that is to the kingdom of darkness. They do not know how to fight a soldier who refuses to bleed when cut. Your reaction, or rather, your lack of a negative reaction, sent the enemy into a state of confusion. They pushed you, and instead of falling, you planted your feet deeper. If you are the one who refused to break when the pressure was heaviest, type 444 in the comments right now to show the enemy he missed his chance. This wasn't just about surviving the day. Anyone can survive if they hold their breath long enough. This was about thriving in a hostile environment. You demonstrated spiritual defiance. You looked at the limitations of reason and walked right past them. You proved that your faith is not dependent on your circumstances. Most people only have faith when the sun is shining. Your faith works in the dark. That is a weapon. You showed that your connection to the divine is stronger than your attachment to this world. By choosing faith when it made no sense, you elevated yourself above the noise of average humanity. You signaled that you are operating on a different frequency. You are not driven by what you see. You are driven by what you know. And what you know is that you are not alone. This illogical, unreasonable, beautiful choice to trust God in the dark didn't just confuse the enemy. It alerted the highest levels of the kingdom of light. You proved you can be trusted with power because you can handle pain. And that is exactly why the general of the angelic armies had to step in. The archangel's interception, Michaelan's to Cain's noticed. You need to understand the scale of what is happening here. When we talk about Archangel Michael, we are not talking about a gentle spirit playing a harp on a cloud. We are talking about the general of the celestial armies. He is the warrior archangel, known for commanding legions and overseeing massive cosmic events. His attention is usually focused on high-level spiritual warfare, on the battles that determine the fate of nations and the balance of the spiritual realm. He doesn't typically stop for the day-to-day struggles of an individual life. A general doesn't usually walk the trenches unless something extraordinary is happening on the front lines. So why did he stop for you? Why did the commander of heaven's armies pause his duties to look at your specific situation? It wasn't because you were perfect. It wasn't because you have lived a flawless life without mistakes. In fact, Michael didn't even look at your record of good deeds versus bad deeds. He stopped because he saw battlefield faith. He saw a soldier you standing alone in the heat of battle, taking heavy fire from life and refusing to retreat. Most people think angels are just there to comfort us. But Michael looks for courage. He took the time to review your soul's response to hardship because it was rare. He saw you taking hits that would have knocked anyone else out of the fight. He saw the moments you wanted to scream at the sky, but chose to bite your tongue and keep walking. That is not just being a good person. That is spiritual combat. You weren't just surviving a bad day. You were holding a strategic position against the enemy. That kind of resilience signals to the hierarchy of heaven that there is a fighter down there who knows how to stand their ground. This is where the ripple effect comes in. When you made that choice to trust God despite the pain, you didn't just change your mood. You sent a shockwave through the spiritual fabric. Imagine a dark, chaotic ocean. Most people are drowning in it, waving their arms, creating noise and confusion. But you stood like a lighthouse. Your faith acted as a beacon. That signal cut through the noise of millions of complaining souls and went straight to the top. It wasn't just an emotional reaction. It was a celestial signal that something different was happening in your life. I know you are used to fighting your battles in silence. You are used to watching quietly and leaving without a trace because you've been conditioned to be alone. But you don't have to carry that weight by yourself anymore. If this message is speaking to the parts of you that no one else understands, press that subscribe button. Don't walk past the spiritual family that God sent to help you carry this burden. This is what separates us from them. Look at how the majority of the world interacts with the spiritual realm. They only look up when they need something. They treat God like a vending machine and angels like emergency services. They only call out when they are in trouble, begging for a rescue. Help me. Fix this. Save me. That is the cry of the masses. But you did something that makes you elite. You didn't just ask for help. You offered faith. You didn't wait for a miracle to believe. You believed so that the miracle could happen. You caught an angel's attention not by your need, but by your strength. While everyone else was asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you were showing the universe that you trust the process. This shifted your status. You went from being a person in need of care to a person of interest. Michael noticed you because you acted like one of his own soldiers. You displayed discipline. You displayed loyalty to the Most High when it cost you everything. That ripple you sent up didn't just fade away. It was flagged. Your guardian angel, who has been with you every step of the way, marked this moment as critical. It was no longer a routine observation. Your file was pulled from the stack. The general himself took notice because you proved that your faith is real, tested and dangerous to the enemy. You are no longer just a civilian in the spiritual war. You have just been recognized as a warrior. And when a warrior proves themselves in battle, the king eventually hears about it. The tribunal of light, a definylysis. The moment you chose to stand firm, a shift occurred in your immediate vicinity. Your personal guardian angel, the one who has been assigned to you since birth, flagged this event immediately. This angel has watched you through every season. They were there when you cried yourself to sleep as a child, and they have been there through every adult heartbreak. Usually, their job is to protect and guide, but in this specific instance, their role changed to that of a witness. They marked the timestamp of your struggle. They highlighted the moment you chose faith over fear, and sent an urgent signal up the chain of command for a higher review. This wasn't just a note in a logbook. It was a priority alert. When this alert reached Archangel Michael, the investigation went deeper. We need to talk about what a divine analysis actually looks like. Humans judge by what they see on the outside. If you are smiling, people think you are fine. If you are quiet, people think you are calm. But Michael looked past the surface. He didn't just see a person sitting quietly in a room. He looked at the intent of your soul. He conducted a forensic analysis of your spirit in that exact moment of pressure. Michael saw the raw reality of what it cost you to keep your composure. He saw the tears you swallowed before they could roll down your cheek because you didn't want anyone to ask you what was wrong. He saw the anger, the justifiable rage that you felt bubbling up in your chest. You had every right to explode. You had every right to burn bridges, but Michael watched as you took that burning coal of anger and extinguished it with grace. He saw the tremble in your hands and the heavy weight on your chest. He witnessed the internal scream that you refused to let out. The world sees your silence as weakness, but Michael recognized it as massive, controlled strength. This deep dive revealed the true nature of your character. It proved that your faith wasn't just a fair-weather feeling. It was an anchor. You weren't worshiping because you were happy. You were worshiping in spite of your pain. Michael saw that you were hurt, confused and exhausted, yet you still refused to let go of God's hand. He saw the depth of your faith, how it stayed rooted even when the storms of life were trying to rip you apart. This specific kind of integrity is what separates the casual believer from the battle-tested warrior. Michael's conclusion was definitive. He realized that what you were doing was not just waiting on God. That is too passive of a description. He defined your actions as active combat. He looked at your situation and declared, "This isn't just hope. This is spiritual warfare disguised as patience." You were fighting back against the darkness, not with shouts or physical weapons, but with a stubborn refusal to agree with the enemy's lies. By remaining steadfast, you were dismantling the trap set for you. You were proving that your spirit is stronger than your emotions. With this conclusion in hand, the atmosphere shifted from analysis to presentation. The general of the Angelic Armies prepared to move. This was no longer a matter to be handled by subordinates. The evidence of your faith was too compelling. Michael gathered the record of your struggle, the tears, the prayers, the silent endurance, and turned toward the throne room. He was taking your case directly to the highest authority. This is the moment of massive suspense in the spiritual realm. Usually prayers go up like incense, but this was different. This was a report of valor from the front lines. The general was bringing proof to the king that there was someone on earth who loved him more than they loved their own comfort. The tribunal had finished its review, and the verdict was clear. You were real. Now, the only thing left was for God himself to see what you had done. The report was on its way to the throne, and the reaction it was about to provoke would alter the course of your destiny. Weaponized Peace, the estrategy of silence. We need to define exactly what you possess, because it is not just ordinary optimism. What you displayed during your darkest hour is something called Transcendent Faith. This is not the kind of faith that just hopes things will get better eventually. That is passive. Transcendent Faith is active. It is a spiritual force that rises completely above your physical circumstances. It is the ability to stand in a room full of bad news and feel a sense of absolute certainty that everything is working for your good. It is faith that doesn't just observe reality, it creates a new one. When you chose to walk in light while your world was covered in darkness, you weren't ignoring the problem, you were superseding it. This brings us to the concept of spiritual warfare, but probably not the way you have heard it taught before. Most people think spiritual warfare is about shouting at the devil or chanting loud prayers. But in your case, your most powerful weapon was your silence. You engaged in weaponized peace. Think about the moment when you were attacked, accused, or misunderstood. Every bone in your body wanted to defend yourself. Your ego wanted to clap back. You wanted to set the record straight and hurt the people who hurt you. But you didn't. You chose to hold your peace. That choice was a sword strike in the spirit realm. When you choose grace over bitterness, you are fighting back against the forces of negativity and evil. You see, the enemy feeds on reaction. Negative spiritual forces are like fires. They need the oxygen of your fear and your anger to keep burning. If they can get you to hate your neighbor, or resent your ex, or curse your boss, they win. They have successfully dragged you down to their level. They were betting everything on your reaction. They poked you, prodded you, and stole from you, waiting for the explosion that would create chaos. But you starved them. By refusing to react, you cut off their supply line. You essentially disarmed the spiritual enemies that were assigned to destroy your life. Your silence was louder than any scream could have been. It communicated that you are not controlled by external events. You broke the chain of evil. Usually, trauma travels in a line. Someone hurts you, so you hurt someone else, and the cycle continues. But you stood there like a dam and said, "It stops with me." You absorbed the pain and returned peace. That is a strategic victory that few people ever achieve. You need to realize the strategic importance of this choice. It wasn't just about being a nice person or taking the high road for the sake of manners. This was about defeating spiritual enemies. When you kept your cool while your world was on fire, you proved that you are governed by a higher kingdom. You showed that your peace is not for sale. You cannot be baited into a fight that is beneath your dignity. This made you dangerous to the kingdom of darkness, because a person who cannot be offended is a person who cannot be controlled. This specific act of weaponized peace is exactly what triggered the cosmic response we are talking about. It wasn't just that you prayed, plenty of people pray. It was that you became a vessel of divine order in a chaotic world. You acted like God would act. You demonstrated the nature of the divine. And that signal, that frequency of absolute, unshakable peace shot straight up to the throne room. It bypassed all the noise of the world. This is what the angels saw. This is what Michael reported. And this is what finally compelled God himself to intervene directly in your situation. You didn't just ask for God to move. You moved in a way that made it impossible for him not to respond. You aligned yourself so perfectly with heaven that heaven had no choice but to crash into your reality. The voice of God, speakless validation. And then it happened. The report from Archangel Michael reached the highest level, and for a moment, the constant activity of heaven seemed to hold its breath. We need to be very clear about what it means when we say God was left speechless. God is all-knowing. Nothing surprises him in terms of information. He knows the end from the beginning. But there is a difference between knowing something will happen and watching it unfold with pride. There is a specific kind of silence in the divine Ralma Selah moment. It is a pause, not of confusion, but a profound movement. It is the kind of silence that comes when a master artist steps back, looks at their creation, and realizes it is exactly what they intended it to be. God reviewed your case. He looked at the long nights you spent in isolation. He looked at the unfair treatment you received at the hands of people you tried to help. He saw the financial pressure that felt like a vice grip around your chest. Most importantly, he saw your heart in the middle of that fire. He saw that despite the heat, your heart did not turn into ash. It turned into gold. It was in this moment of divine review that the silence was broken by a declaration that defined your existence. God looked at your faithfulness and spoke words that should heal every wound you are currently carrying. This one reminds me why I created humanity. Let that sink in. You have to understand the weight of that statement. The angels obey God because it is their nature. They are programmed for obedience. The stars and the oceans obey the laws of physics because they have no choice. But you are a human being with free will. You have the terrifying power to choose. You could have chosen to walk away. You could have chosen to curse the heavens. You had every reason to be angry, yet of your own free will, without seeing a single miracle yet, you chose to love and trust. That is something an angel cannot do. That is something the stars cannot do. That voluntary love, that choice to trust in the dark, is the most precious thing in the universe. Stop right there. If you haven't subscribed yet, you need to ask yourself, why are you resisting your own nourishment? Every time you feel empty, God guides you back to messages like this one. Don't ignore the hand that is feeding your spirit. Subscribe so you stay tethered to this frequency. Do not cut off the voice that lifts you up when the rest of the world tries to tear you down. God saw the extraordinary in your ordinary life. You became a reflection of divine power. Think about what God does. He takes chaos and creates order. He takes darkness and commands light. When you stood in the chaos of your life and refused to let it consume you, you were mirroring God's nature on earth. You were acting like your Father. You didn't just survive the storm, you became the calm within it. That is the ultimate sign of spiritual maturity. You proved that you are not just a creation, but a true child of the Most High, bearing the family resemblance of peace and authority. Because of this, the verdict has been handed down. This is the moment you have been waiting for, even if you didn't know it. God has declared that the testing period is officially over. Every student knows the anxiety of exam week, but there is a moment when the proctor says, "Pencils down." The test is complete. You've been in a season of intense grading, where every reaction was being monitored. But because you held your ground, because you engaged in weaponized peace, and because you reflected the character of heaven, the grade has been entered. You have passed the hardest grade. You are graduating from the season of struggle. This was divine affirmation. It wasn't just a pat on the back. It was a legal decree in the spiritual courts. The enemy, who was betting on your failure, has lost his stake. The accusations against you have been silenced because your faith spoke louder than your flaws. You are no longer under the microscope of trial. You are now moving under the banner of approval. God has looked at you, fully seen your pain and your perseverance, and He is satisfied. The silence is over, and now the reward begins. The great acceleration, recovering lost time. I know exactly what you were thinking right now. You were thinking about the time you lost. You were looking at the years you spent in that struggle, the years of stagnation, the missed opportunities, and the delays. It feels like while you were fighting for your sanity, the rest of the world moved on without you. You feel behind, but because of the verdict we just discussed, because you passed the test with that speechless level of faith, a new protocol has been activated for your life. It is called divine acceleration. We need to be clear about how the spiritual economy works. It is not fair, it is just. And justice in the kingdom means compensation, because your test was harder than average. Your reward must be greater than average. You didn't just go through a minor inconvenience. You went through a war. Therefore, you don't just get a participation trophy. You get the spoils of war. The delay you experienced wasn't empty time. It was a slingshot being pulled back. The further back you were pulled, the farther and faster you are about to be launched forward. Heaven is now committed to restoring the years the locusts have eaten. If you are ready to receive 10 years of blessings in 10 months, type 444 to open the gates of acceleration. This introduces the concept of kingdom speed. In the normal world, the world of the men, success takes a linear path. You work hard for 10 years to get 10 years worth of results. That is the slow, grinding path of human effort. But you have unlocked a different timeline. Things that take other people 10 years to achieve are going to happen for you in 10 months. You are stepping into a season where the timeline collapses. You will accomplish more in this next season than you did in the last decade combined. This is not magic. It is the momentum of favor. You are going to experience doors opening without you even knocking. Usually you have to bang on doors, beg for opportunities, and chase people down. That season is over. Now, because of the acceleration attached to your faith, opportunities are going to hunt you down. You will walk into rooms you didn't apply for. You will be offered positions you didn't interview for. The struggle to make it happen is being replaced by the grace of watching it happen. This is the direct result of the shift in your spiritual status. You are no longer in the general queue. Before this shift, your prayers might have felt like they were stuck in transit. But now, you are a marked soul. You have been moved to the priority list. Think of it like shipping. Most people are waiting on standard delivery for their blessings. They get them when they get them. Your life is now being handled with priority shipping by the divine. Your petitions are hitting the top of the stack. When you speak, heaven listens with a new level of urgency because you have proven you can be trusted with the answer. So, what does this actually look like in your daily life? You need to look for the tangible proof. This isn't just a feeling. It shows up in reality. You will start seeing unexpected resources checks in the mail, debts suddenly canceled, or money coming from sources you didn't foresee. You will see broken relationships either suddenly restored or peacefully removed to make space for better ones. You will wake up with a sudden clarity in your mind, knowing exactly what to do after years of confusion. But the greatest sign will be the peace. You will walk through chaotic situations that used to stress you out, and you will feel absolutely nothing but calm. That is the peace that surpasses understanding. It is the evidence that you are moving at a different speed, protected by a different power. Watch closely in the coming days. The acceleration has already started. The waiting game is over. The time of rapid fulfillment is here. The mark of the exception, your new mandate. We have arrived at the final truth. You are now walking with what the spiritual realm calls the mark of the exception. This is a badge of honor, but it comes with a heavy price. With this new level of divine favor comes a strict mandate. You cannot go back to living the way you used to. you certainly cannot go back to living like them. The people around you, the ones who haven't been tested in the fire, can afford to be petty. They can afford to hold grudges, gossip, and waste their time on meaningless drama. They are civilians in the spirit. You are not. You have been promoted. And when you are promoted in the kingdom, your standard of living must rise to match your rank. You are now required to walk with the posture of a chosen one. This means you don't get the luxury of losing your temper over small things anymore. You don't get to clap back at every insult. Why? Because you are carrying something fragile and powerful. You are carrying the glory of God. When you walk into a room, you bring the atmosphere of heaven with you. If you stoop down to argue with people who are committed to misunderstanding you, you lower your spiritual stature. You have to protect your peace aggressively because that peace is the source of your power. This is your new reality. You are in the world, but you are not of it. You might feel lonely sometimes because you can't laugh at the same jokes or sit at the tables of the scornful anymore. That is okay. That isolation is just the VIP section of the spirit. It is the cost of being an exception. Do not try to blend back in. You were made to stand out. You might be asking, why did I have to go through all of that pain? Here is the answer. Your life is now a lighthouse. A lighthouse is built on the jagged rocks, right where the ocean is roughest, for a reason. It is there to warn others and to guide ships safely home. You went through the darkness so you could lead others out of it. Your scars are not signs of damage. They are a map. When people see you, now blessed, accelerated, and peaceful, they will ask, how did you do it? And you will be able to tell them. Your story is the evidence that God is real. You are the proof that faith works. There are people attached to your destiny who are waiting for you to rise so they can know it is possible to survive. If you had quit, they would have no hope, but because you stood, they will stand. This is the legacy you are building. It is not just about cars, houses, or money. It is about being a living, breathing testimony that says, I trusted God when it hurt, and He didn't fail me. Now we need to seal this. In the spiritual realm, agreement is powerful. If you receive this message, if you accept this new mandate and the acceleration that comes with it, I want you to make a physical move. Go to the comment section right now and write the number 44. This number represents protection and the presence of angels. By typing 444, you are confirming that you accept the help of the angelic armies, including Archangel Michael, to walk out this new chapter. You are signaling that you are done with the old life and ready for the new. Join the community of the chosen who are making this declaration today. As you leave this video, walk with your head high. Do not let the world drag you down. You have been tested, you have been reviewed, and you have been approved. The silence of heaven has broken, and the blessings are pouring out. You are seen, you are known, and you are dangerously powerful. And listen, the fact that you made it to the very end of this message proves that your soul was starving for this truth. Do not leave this connection behind. Subscribing is your physical commitment to stay on this path of acceleration. Join this movement. Your next confirmation is already waiting for you in the next video. Go and be the light you were created to be. The test is over. Your time is now.